Hey, good morning, everyone here in the US, and good evening or good afternoon to those of you who are joining us from elsewhere. Welcome to another exciting event on Turkish cinema. My name is Tunç Şen. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of History and the deputy director of the Sakıp Sabancı Center for Turkish Studies here at Columbia University. It is my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome you all to today's conversation with our distinguished guests on one of the classics of Yeşilçam cinema, Ah Güzel İstanbul, Oh Beautiful Istanbul. And we are delighted to host Ayla Algan, the leading actress of the movie, and Murat Belge, eminent cultural critic and professor of comparative literature. Before leaving the floor to my dear colleague and Sakıp Sabancı visiting professor of Turkish Studies, Zeynep Çelik, to introduce our guest today, let me express how grateful we are to Sakıp Sabancı family for their invaluable support to promote Turkish studies here in New York and the US. I should also thank Columbia Global Centers Istanbul for co-sponsoring our film series this year. And many thanks to Ararat Şekeryan, our center's program manager, and Seden Gürbilek from Global Centers Istanbul for their invaluable support. Finally, I would like to thank everybody in the audience for being with us today in this special panel. And I want to encourage you all to enrich our conversation with your questions and comments. You can submit your posts in the Q&A box that you can find at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So without further ado, I'm now turning to Professor Zeynep Çelik.
A warm welcome to you all. Today, we are honored to host two eminent figures of Turkish culture and art. I will not even attempt to do justice to their long and remarkable careers with my brief presentations. We have only so little time and so much to talk about. Murat Belge is an academic, translator, literary critic, political commentator, and civil rights activist. Belge received his PhD in 1969 from Istanbul University, where he worked on leftist criticism in English literature. After the military coup of 1980, he was compelled to leave academia, and he started İletişim Yayınları, a publishing house, and Birikim Dergisi, a multidisciplinary critical journal. In 1996, Professor Belge returned to academic life, founding the Comparative Literature Department at Bilgi University, where he still teaches. Belge published numerous articles and books on Turkish literature, Ottoman and Turkish history, Turkish food culture, and the history of Istanbul. His translations into Turkish include works by James Joyce, Charles Dickens, William Faulkner, and John Berger. Ayla Algan is an actress and singer. She was born in Istanbul and educated in French secondary schools. In the early 1960s, Algan moved to the US with her husband Beklan Algan, a key figure in Turkish theater. In New York, she joined the Actors Studio. Making her first film debut in 1964 with Ertem Göreç's legendary movie Karanlıkta Uyananlar, I don't know how to translate this into English, those who woke up in darkness. This movie was followed 2 years later by Ah Güzel İstanbul. Algan played in more than 50 films in Turkey. In her long theater career, she acted in more than 60 plays, producing and directing many of them at the same time. She's fondly remembered by her roles, among others in Hamlet, The Threepenny Opera, and The Good Man of Szechuan in the 1960s. I believe the last two were the earliest Brecht productions in Turkey. Algan acted in many internationally acclaimed theaters in Europe and the USA, receiving many awards. She also pursued a very successful singing career. Those of you who watched Güzel Istanbul will testify to her lovely voice. Staging 13th century mystic poet Yunus Emre's work in French, English, and German, Algan introduced Yunus Emre's philosophy to a wide international community. She's currently engaged in teaching. Let me now start by asking a question to Ayla Hanım. We will then go wherever the conversation takes us. Ayla Hanım, your movie career in Turkey starts in the 1960s, nostalgically remembered as the golden days of Turkish cinema. Could you say a few words on the atmosphere and the conditions in which you worked?
Well, I wish Sadri was with me here, sitting and looking at you, Zeynep. That would have been so good for me. This was my first part, like we call yardımcı rol değil de first role, mega story, first time in my life. So because I was a theater person, all I was playing was broad, because theater people is not good in cinemas, you know. Now I teach people and I say, if they come from the theater, I say, you go, you finish your conservatory and you come after, I say, because I have to bring all the things they're playing into minimalist, like in life. So I like these days you had giving to us, and I'm very happy. Sorry, I'm very happy because this bargain, takas, this bargain we make, mostly with Murat Belge. I like him so much, and I think his father was cineast, with whom he was married, your father. You know?
He was the first husband of Gabor.
You see, I had learned today, 1 minute before. Onur called
Really?
me, yes, and he said, ask him that. Wonderful. So I believe that some sentence that I want to say for this girl I share. I think that I want to say that she comes from Izmir. What is Izmir in 67 or before, with Kibeles, Artemis, Athena, big gods of woman gods she comes from. And look what I have to make of her, a salad of caricature that she tells lies, that she starts when I was preparing my role theory, I had to take all those things, like Sadri was taking from the Ottoman Empire and Byzance, you see. So we got the two together, Murat. We got in a one song, what? Shahnaz Longa.
Yeah, which is Romanian.
Yeah, you see. So it was with Kanun, they played with Kanun. And he prepares that to this girl who doesn't know anything. I wish I said at that time that village institutes were there. She would know music, she would know, or let's say theater, yani bölge tiyatroları. If we had all this. this girl would have been something else. Because her ancients and the legacy she has, she is like got humble to hold all those legacies in her body and in her mind. Very important. So what I took this was all that time, 67, we start Esinal Şarmi, folk üçlüsü, to start to the villages. Halk şarkılarına döndük. This girl is, I got this song, but I couldn't put it because when the film we were making in 67, I wasn't singing. I made a song about this woman. The ox in Anatolia, the ox has a very important, which we need now maybe. Harmanı kaldırdı çünkü. Maybe today we need that, you know, this ox. Then there is a poetry of Nazım Hikmet who says, kadınlar, bizim kadınlarımızın sofradaki yeri öküzümüzden sonra gelen kadınlar. And I made a song like that. Koca küzüğün diziğindedir. Even in Montreux, I was in the cars making a live program. Yes, and everybody was going out from the coffees to look what I was looking down because the ox was for me there. He was sick, he will die. So this village woman like that, uy koca kız, neler ettin bana koca kız, that if you die, I have to bring another woman to do your work. Very pathetic. But even now today, they like so much the songs. It's a Middle Anatolia song, and I have written the words. And when I made long plays, cassettes, and so they used to put this because the only one was making rating, you know. It was a very good rating I had with that. Everybody liked the song, not me. Even a little boy, I was in Frankfurt, her mother came in shopping places, and she said to me, you know that my 4 years old, 5 years old, knows your song? And he says to her boy, look, Ayla Algan'a bak, Ayla Algan. And the boy looks like that, he doesn't know me. When she said koca öküz, then he said, so. Enjoy. Muratcan, I know that the Ottoman and Byzance, which things I didn't make researches. And of course, when I said yes, because when Art of Yilmaz came to me and to ask to me, are you going to play? I said, I'm a theater person. What do you want from me? He said, I don't have money. I gave all my money to Sadri, and I don't have money for this girl. Would you like to play? Yeah. I said, of course, Arthur. Even if I don't know what I'm going to do, I'll play for you. And that starts that beliefs on cinema. And now I give classes about cinema.
Can I ask something very quickly about that Izmir detail that you very nicely put it? Is it something the script writers had already decided when they wrote the script, that the girl, the young woman, should be from Izmir, aspiring to be an actress and coming to Istanbul? Or did you have any contribution, Ayla Hanım, to that Izmir detail?
Sorry that I didn't have any chance to work with Ayşe Şasa. I didn't. I would have done some other things maybe, with her. When she comes to make photographs, the first scene in Istanbul, maybe I would have put a lead like Ceylanımı alıp götürdüler, neni yavrum ne. Maybe I could have sing that and take positions, very modern positions, under a cultural woman song. Maybe I would have done that because I tried to make a comic type. You know this comic type? For me, it was good because in theater they made me play classics, 2 times Ophelia, 1 time Hamlet on the open air at the Rumeli side. So I like this play. I like this girl. Yani, it's a romantic comedy, you see. It's not a broad comedy. It's a romantic comedy, very good. And then when I say that, I had the same chance for Fanny Bryce in New York. We were off-Broadway playing too in the K. Phillips School after finishing with Actor Studio. And then Selznick came and said to me, do you want to play in Funny Girl? The audition was in Paul Newman. I went to Selznick because I was at theater, my husband too. He was very bright, beautiful, but he liked directing. He wouldn't go to Hollywood, you know. That's why I said, of course, you know, you singing. These songs I know. My mother was singing to me. I was 5 years old, Fanny Bryce. And she had a legacy that the person who would play my role, she said, should look like me. And they told me because she was a Jewish girl, you know, and they said, don't learn English, don't talk English, talk like her. The song's all right. And she didn't have beautiful legs. Same thing in me. I don't have beautiful girls. And my mother used to say, you couldn't go dance ballet and make pointe because your legs are not beautiful. Okay, I started, you see. So this girl is this girl. She's funny. She's really funny girl. But
okay, Ayla Hanım, I think this is a very good point from Ayşe.
Yeah.
And here we would very much.
Zeynep, after that, I won't take too much things because the things that happened in the scenario, it's not me. I don't have anything to do with. I take my last scene. When she says, I lied to you, I'm Ayşe. First scene and last scene is my scenario. In between, it's without willing or willing to make her Western or Arabesque things to make her sing for money. You understand? In the middle, it's a story. It's not her. Her story is another thing.
Okay, but it's an interesting.
Zeynep, don't worry, I'm not talking anymore.
No, you will. We will bring you back, but we want to hear a little bit about Istanbul in the background. But we want to hear you.
Yes, and I was married in Hilton Hotel, if you want to know. You see, I was very a la mode at that time. That's fine. Okay, till my last scene, I won't talk.
Oh, we'll make you talk. But maybe we can put Istanbul on stage now.
Yes.
With Murat Bey, lütfen.
Please, I like him. I like him, Murat.
When 1960s, when this film was made, I always think was a crucial period of Istanbul. Istanbul is an ever-changing and maybe at the same time never-changing city. But in modern times, and times that we can call modern, which is the Republican period in general, until 1960, I believe, I remember, Istanbul was a city of about 1 million citizens. And 1 million citizens I consider a sizable community, good enough for a city. And as my friend, the writer Orhan Pamuk once said, at that time, this was a city of 1 million people. Since then, it became a village of 16 million people. I think the paradox really sums it up. We had a much more organic life in the 60s, much closer to what you can consider natural. But at the same time, maybe rather behind the terms or the standards of a modern city. As you can see in this film, in many parts, the historical parts especially, it was a neglected city, I can say. So this is a fact by itself. For some of us, it was the good fortune that it was neglected. For some of us, it's the opposite. Just before 1960, when we had this coup, Menderes was trying to modernize the city, opening up broader avenues and this and that. And a lot of us who remember those times remember with a lot of nostalgia and sorrow for so many things that were sacrificed at the moment, which was not necessary. But since then, this is the time that industrialization begins in Turkey in general, importation of tractors and this and that. So there's the superfluous population in the countryside with the new machinery. And so people start coming to the big cities, and the biggest city is Istanbul. So they come. There was a period when about 500,000 people came to live in Istanbul every year. Fantastic. Until then, of course, the 1 million, say 2 million Istanbul could absorb people and could transmit its culture. When I say culture, I don't mean to say people going to the theater or that sort of thing, but you know, how to go to a taverna. I mean, that's cultural enough. But when it got out of hand, then of course, Istanbul was no longer the teacher of behavior and this and that. It was sort of dragged along behind this gigantic, this city, which became more and more gigantic as time passed. So in this film from 66, 67, was it? We can still see Istanbul as it used to be for a long, long time, just before the change started. The people who shot the film, Atif, etc., who wrote the scenario, were not aware of this happening, really. None of us were, because we were living in it. You understand something once time passes and it becomes the past, and then you have a better view of where things are standing, etc. And so we have been living in a different Istanbul ever since. Well, if we begin to talk about Istanbul, I don't know where it can take us. It's a fantastic, very, very old city with a very rich history, cultural, everything. If you have a particular question you would like me to answer about the city, because I could talk only in very general terms.
Maybe we can specifically talk about the particular neighborhoods manifest in the movie, like Beylerbeyi as so-called a traditional looking small neighborhood on the Bosphorus, and then we have Harbiye, and where Hilton Hotel is located, and then we have Sultanahmet, where a Hashmet character works as a photographer. So what would you like to say about these references to particular neighborhoods of Istanbul?
Well, I should say Beylerbeyi, where his house is shack, let's say, is situated. It has not really changed much. The Anatolian Asian side of the Bosphorus has been less open to these modern developments. And even today, after all these years, you can go there and see some quaint old corners, etc. And there in the film, what we see, we keep on seeing the iron railing of the mosque of Beylerbeyi, etc. It was, I think there was a scene around Kandilli as well, but I'm not sure. But these parts have not been changed drastically as some other parts have. And another perhaps paradoxical thing is that Harbiye hasn't changed much either, because it had already changed. But by the time that this film was made, and Hilton, well, Hilton is a significant building. It was a modern building par excellence, but it was built in a period where people had the kind of respect they should have for history and old things, etc. So Hilton is quite high, 8, 9 stories high, but it's not as arrogant, as belligerent as these new modern skyscrapers we keep on seeing nowadays. And there's an aesthetic of Hilton. It doesn't really come and sit down on Istanbul in a bossy way. No, it tries to conform to Istanbul, not to not to be one of these monstrous presences that we have been used to see afterwards. Well, Sultanahmet, of course, has changed. Sorry, because Sultanahmet was bound to be the touristic center. Sultanahmet is, geographically speaking, the most eastern tip of the city, but culturally speaking, it is the center of the city, because the biggest place of worship, the Hagia Sophia, was there. The palace was there. So it's the political center, but also the religious center. And then the hippodrome, the social center. So all this was assembled there. And we had neglected it, as I was saying, for a long time, when we were not breaking it up to build some new stupid buildings. But again, 1960, Turkey entering modern life, modern international relations, tourism, etc. So that area had to have a facelifting, all sorts of lifting had to take place. And so today it is very difficult to find another Hashmet taking photographs with this old antiquated machine, and another Aisha coming and finding him there taking photos.
I want to, can I say, Murat, can I say, in this Istanbul, there was a cosmopolitan place, and these were the islands, the
Yes.
Prince Islands. Because my childhood I was there. Every summer we used to go there. We didn't have a house. We were the Turks, the poor Turks, who went from Cumhuriyet. After Cumhuriyet, my mother, my father came from Crete Islands. He liked very much Büyükada. And then my friends were Jewish, Armenian, Greeks. We used to go to Ayorgi, where there was a church which we could drink wine. Now it's there again. In 60s, some people went there and disturbed them. And bourgeois boys, girls, not girls, boys mostly, disturbed the patriarchal place, because there is a beautiful, in Love Street we call Aşıklar Yolu, bir yetimhane var orada. My grandfather used to make painting, oil painting, post-impressionist. Now in Poland they will do that. His pictures will go, his paintings will go. So, and Tunnel was, which I was living there, Tunnel, Le Bon, Marquis, was the place that everybody used to build up themselves, put beautiful things, and make a long walks till Taksim, you see. And at that time, we were just taking my winter clothes, our winter blanket and things, and we were make a göç in Büyükada. Reşat Nuri Güntekin is there to his house. Many poets are there. But rich people had their villas. And with their key, they used to come out and talk. So we were azınlıktaydık biz, the Turks, in the islands.
The Turks as a minority.
Yeah, Tunnel at the same time.
Yeah.
Tunnel too. Poland people make the tunnel, and things like that. So it was very cosmopolitan. It was when Atatürk gave the place in Tünel, Şişhane, to the Jewish people who all the world wouldn't take them.
Mm.
You remember that, Murat?
Not
yeah.
exactly.
Ah,
Not that area.
all the Jewish, my friends, in Damdösyon too, they were there because they came from the sea, and he gave here is for you, he said to the Jewish people who came to Istanbul. He invited them. Nobody in the world wanted them. And when we say, we don't say Yahudi, we say it Musevi.
There's a funny story about that when Yehudi Menuhin was to come for a concert in Istanbul.
Yeah, everybody was coming. Sofia Vambo. Oh, everybody was.
Sofia Vambo, yes. Well, the newspaper man changed the name of Yehudi Menuhin, thinking it could be an insult, so he made it Musevi Menuhin.
Yeah, that's why Muhsin Ertuğrul, which is my director who built up the theater, the opera, and so he was saying everybody in Istanbul has his own theater, but we don't have a Turkish theater. Baylar, bayanlar, please give us a theater. And after they built up the National Theater. That's my old days. Now they know my age.
Can you hear me? Can I maybe join? Because I wonder about this, we have also a very important aspect of the movie is the class representation. And we have these women, at the beginning of this monologue, Hashmet is introducing them. Hashmet has an interesting, relationship with a woman. He is like, he is kind of forced to get married, all his friends and his circle, at this meyhane, almost like every day, oh, Hashmet, like you have to get married, whatever. And he recalls and he introduces us these women and everything. But how would you, Professor Belge, would you read that connection? His relationship with Ayşe, for example, he's this, at the beginning of the movie, he calls himself, oh, lazy Hashmet, oh, miskin, oh, lazy, oh, this, how would you translate miskin? I don't know, but lazy, this, yeah. So he's calling himself a lazy person. He has this background, this glorious, background. Actually, Hashmet, the name itself means glorious. Yeah, so he's like recalling his past, and then he has a mother, like in the second sentence of the movie, we are introduced to her. The mother abandons the family and him, running away with an officer. And then Hashmet has this interesting relationship with women, to get married. And then he's like, oh, I would maybe get married to this rich woman, but oh, this woman would make me a lot of problems. I would maybe get married to this, a daughter of this, deli owner, but she would even make me problems. So I don't know. And then you have Ayşe, and Hashmet falls in love, literally, with Ayşe. And he's like, you have this scene, he's like, they are in this small, hut, Kulübe-i Ahsan, they with the Ottoman name, they call it the house of, the hut of the sorrow, whatever, which is sorrow is very, it is Istanbul actually in the movie, or from Orhan Pamuk. So how would you read it? Because he says, okay, I'm gonna get a real job, for Ayşe. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna go see my old friends, maybe they give me a job. And then you have this very strange bank scene, he's at the bank, he's about to see the director, but he runs away and he says, even if they whip me here, I wouldn't get this 9-to-5 job and become the part of this capitalistic, system, whatever. I don't know. What is your comment about?
Well, let me start saying something general about the film. Like so many works of art, the film has its own allegory, I would say. It's not a medieval allegory, obviously, but the characters we see are not just Ayşe, are not just Haşmet, they are types of certain classes, certain strata living in the city. So Haşmet is the sort of the old remainder of the old aristocracy, which we have to qualify in the Turkish case because the Ottoman system did not allow for a landed aristocracy. So in a way, what was aristocratic in life came through education. And so this gave place to the three-generational social structure of especially a place like Istanbul, where one man, one intelligent, able man makes money and he dies, his sons take over and they start spending that money. And when we come to the third generation, it's poverty. So Haşmet is, in a way, a representative of this social phenomenon. And he happens to be the third generation. His father has devoured whatever was left from the grandfather. And so he is now this photographer. He has to be a womanizer, which is part of that social class. But then at the same time, he is this nonchalant bohemian who cannot commit himself to any sort of discipline. He can exist, apparently, as we see in the film. He is not prosperous or anything, but he can survive. And so he doesn't need any luxury. And although he likes to be with women and enjoys being with a woman, he is at the same time afraid of the woman, the wife, becoming the boss. There he is also the Ottoman male. I mean, the possible prospective brides in the neighborhood, which he can choose, they come from wealthier families. Maybe they will ask for expensive clothes, whatever, and he doesn't want to go into this bother. And then comes Ayşe, and Ayşe represented by Ayla. So she is very sweet.
I see.
It's a different, very different experience for him. This woman, this young girl, is not part of life that he knows. And she's an outsider anyway. Comes from his...
I want to add something. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes. I want to add something.
Yes.
Haşmet knows that Ayşe is a virgin.
Mm.
And she is a virgin. Let's say she comes from Izmir for the Virgin Mary house. She knows this house, Ayşe. Haşmet doesn't know, but Ayşe knows this house. They go and put candles. They still do, tourists. So I thought that the matriarchal finishes with Virgin Mary.
Mhm.
Because nobody believes now that you can have a child like Jesus Christ without having a man, right?
Yeah, right.
Saint Pierre was with her there. It was the last patriarchal beginning, was beginning with Virgin Mary. So what she has to the girl was not to be spoiled, not to be, she was like a crystal for him, that if you touch her, she can break. You see that even if she kisses her from here. And the girl is kissing her because she's still from Aphrodite. She kisses him from the mouth. He doesn't kisses her. He kisses her from here, but Aisha kisses her from the mouth. She is Venus. She's Aphrodite. She comes from Izmir, you know, Ionian.
Well, Aphrodite is not so virginal.
No, I don't think she's virgin. She couldn't, I don't think. You
Well,
think? I played that I don't give my virginity. I played that, but I don't.
Well, maybe more than being physically a virgin, Aisha has the character of virginality with her. She is I mean, with her innocence, etc. Even if she went to bed with some people, her character would not change in that sense. There
I
would
think
be this freshness in her.
I don't think she went.
No, she wasn't.
She was virgin. I like Ophelia.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's, I think, well, I'm talking too much maybe, but...
Oh, talk. I love you. I love you.
I said it has its allegoric sides because it's about a certain problem. That certain problem is a huge problem faced by the entire world: Westernization, modernization. The West started this damn thing, so we all had to follow and change our lifestyle, change everything. And it's so uncomfortable to be forced to change your way of life. And in these years, the 60s, in Turkish cultural life, the left was sort of emerging. Anti-imperialism was a constant topic. And of course, it was very easy to identify the West with imperialism. That's where it comes from. And in those years, actually, this is about 2 years before, I think, Kemal Tahir's novel, Mother State, the foundation of the Ottoman Empire, was published. And the cinema people of that period, not just Atif, director here, but also Metin Erksan, Halit Refi, etc. They were all great fans of Kemal Tahir. And from him, they got introduced. Kemal Tahir was a Marxist of a sort. But by that time, Kemal Tahir had made his divorce to Orthodox Marxism, according to which the Ottoman society had to be a feudal society and then passing on to a kind of underdeveloped capitalism and this and that. But Kemal Tahir was an admirer of the Ottoman state, which he regarded as a proto-socialist state. And talking about infrastructure, superstructure, etc., he put the idea into especially the cinema people's minds, that with a different infrastructure, the superstructure has to change. So all these films that we admire so much, Gone with the Wind, whatever, are the outcomes, the products of Western world, capitalism, etc. And so this should not appeal to Turks who have had a different history, and so they should have different aesthetic values, different aesthetic approaches at the same time. And the Turkish filmmakers thought this was a good idea. And here we see that, we see traces of this approach. Like I would say, he meets an old friend. At the time, he's thinking of making money. And they say, it's a group of people, silly people. They will introduce Western music. And he asks, well, if people don't like it, they say, no, they will like it. And so they make the man at the taverna play this very horrible thing, whatever it is, a very bad example of Western music, if that was the idea. And then they are kicked out, etc. Now, I sympathize with this sort of thing to the point of not taking this haughty attitude towards your own tradition. I personally like classical old Ottoman music very much, and people should. I mean, of course, you mustn't use such words as must, should, ought to, etc. in artistic, cultural matters, but there's nothing wrong with liking that sort of music, and there's nothing wrong with not liking that kind of music. But there is, again, no point in making a sort of evaluation. You know, this is good because it's mine. I mean, those people in the taverna, it would be better for them if they could also listen to eine kleine Nachtmusik together with Bimen or whatever. Those things I am still critical about the whole period, but also there are traces of that in Atif. Atif was not as doctrinaire as Metin Erksan and especially Halit Refi. They were very strict about this. Atif was always, finding his own way, his own style. He had this knack, very, very sweet too. And this is what I can say in criticism of the film, which otherwise I like a lot.
If I may jump in, I'm very curious about the set, the conditions in which you worked. And I'm wondering, Ayla Hanım, how much improvisation is there in this movie? Some of the dialogues come across as so authentic and as though they were just produced there. And I'm wondering if you made those up as you went along or whether everything was scripted.
When we were working, because I'm a theater people, of course, I knew all the text. I know all the text. And Sadri was a filmmaker, which I learned a lot of things from me, which I'm teaching now. The way he plays, the way when you think, when you go into a flashback, when you come back from the flashback, the things he knows help me. Even now, when I'm teaching cinema, my scenarios are made some thinking of Sadri, which I learned how to talk in policier, use pronouns. I show them everywhere. When I say, I don't say like him. He doesn't say Sadri. Subtext, play the subtext like in theater. I made them play a situation like homeostasis beliefs. Now, in this moment, because cinema is not like theater, even if you're silent, it takes your body language. You play with your body, right? So the people, when you say in diction or doublage, S, he stopped talking, but his body is there. He's playing. You see the difference with theater when you make. And of course, the things I gained from him made me much better, but after a while, made me much better to see the cinema. At the moment we are there, mostly we didn't have time to look to my scenario, but at that time, Atıf Yılmaz, Lütfi Akat, all the regisseurs had, they were making films too, you know, with other people's scenarios. They had making houses. Yani film yapıyorlardı. But they were directors. So what we start with Karanlıkta Oynananlar, a film which my father even paid, and after they escaped, because a little bit too much against the rich people, against a film like that. We had stories and so. It doesn't matter. It was a good thing. Those who wakes up at night was the subject. It was my first film, but it wasn't the first part I was playing. Like Güzel Istanbul, it was my first plays that I do. And we want to put a syndicate, like in America. Yes, but the thing is comic because the filmmaker, the patron of the film, and the director was the same man. That was a really funny story. Of course, but we did. And Memduh Lütfi Akat wanted that. So they start. I was playing Yıldız Tepe'de, a little role, and I was assisting Memduh to know film, what is film. I just came from America to see what's happening in films. And he used to call me, Tokmak, look what I give to the people. I give them Lufer, the food he was bringing for the workers, he was saying. You see, he was calling me Tokmak. And those people came and worked with us in the worker film, Karantoyana, all the syndicate. After that, we told them Ertem Göreç. There is Ertem Göreç thing which my assistant made about how they build up the syndicates, because he was there, Ertem Göreç. And at the end we said, look, we give the syndicate to you. You have to choose somebody. We can't be that actors, directors, and syndicate. We have to have somebody. Oh, no, we can't, they said. We can't. We are very happy. We used to eat down on the floor. That Turkish people in Ottoman, some has that big things on the floor. And we are very happy, and we can't say my patron is Memdu because he is my director. It was a comic thing what we had used in Hollywood, in our Hollywood, let's say. Yeşilçam.
Ayla Hanım, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, the film received an award in Italy, right? A couple of years after
Yes.
it was produced. Do you know anything about how the film was received in other countries in Turkey? I mean, how?
Very good. And now it's in all the universities like a classic. In Cyprus, I went in Cyprus, I went to Poland. You know what theater is I go. You understand?
But what is so central?
The second prize, because Yeşilçam, Hollywood, he didn't have money to make color films. And because we were white, black and white, we became second. Otherwise, we would have get the first. But I don't think this film was. Gani was a wonderful cameraman. He was funny, like that holding, not having anything down his hand. He was making puns all the Bosphorus. All the Bosphorus, he didn't have a hanger in his hand. He was doing it himself. And I think black and white was something more nostalgic, maybe.
It's nice, I like it.
Huh?
Black and white, I like.
I also am thinking right now of the documentary value of this film. And I would like to show it in my class on Istanbul as another Istanbul, because it's very hard for people to visualize what the hills of the Bosphorus look like. And when you look from the Anatolian side, there's nothing on those hills. So I'm wondering if that contributes in your minds to the value of the film. The yallıs, I recognize them, Murat, but they are so dolled up now. They're painted, they're restored, the ones in the back of the hut, the big yallı. So yes, it is the same thing, but it's not the same thing. So I'd like to hear what you think about that documentary value.
Well, this became a fashion, you know. People began to watch old films, not for the films, but to see what Istanbul was like when those films were shot. So, I mean, this is a fact, the change of the city. And it is a fact which makes many people who remember something nostalgic. So it's very, very understandable. I mean, it was picturesque in its own way. It was beautiful in its own way, original. not like anything we saw, very human. I remember I wrote about it in my book on Istanbul. I was sitting in a park around Kumkapı. I used to go there a lot. By the wall, there was a tall wall, there was a cart. But the cart was something like a hut on 4 wheels. It had a door, some steps. It had 2 windows, which were always closed. Obviously, someone was living in that hut, converted from a cart of some kind. One day, the door opened, and a dwarf came out. So it was this dwarf who had made it his home. And I remember it was so touching. It was, made you laugh, but at the same time you felt like crying. The city was something like this. And that city disappeared. I used to walk a lot when I was a university student, and I used to see these very decrepit houses, buildings, using anything they could lay their hands on as building material. So this part of the house was brick, the other part was tin, the other part was cardboard or whatever. No windows, nothing, poverty. But then there would be these flowers. They did not have enough money to buy flower pots. It was the olive oil or flower oil can, the most luxurious flower pot. And they, in spite of the poverty and all that, these people had will to live and joie de vivre. They knew how to enjoy life in the most horrible conditions. So this is something that, one really misses. It was a way of life.
We have some really
We
good
have time.
questions in the Q&A box, and I would like to encourage our participants to,
Yes.
post their questions and comments. So maybe we can pick one of those questions as a startup. Kevin Riley's question just struck me for some reason. Let me just read it out loud, and you can also read the question in the Q&A box. He's saying, I lived in Sinop in the early 70s and visited Istanbul in 1972. In this movie, there are some very modern aspects of 1966 Istanbul, like cars, dress, music, live entertainment, etc., that we didn't have in Sinop in the 70s.
Yes, yes.
As the modernity of Istanbul now moved out to smaller cities in Turkey, such as Sinop, in other words, has the modernity of small cities caught up to the modernity of Istanbul and other large Turkish cities? Any thanks to you? Yeah.
Not really. There are some like Konya, for instance. Konya is, of course, the main example for this kind of thing, where the conservative ideology is dominant. Mm-hmm. And so they reject this kind of thing. But in a lot of other places, it's more to be explained on financial terms. They are poor, so they can't afford that kind of life. On the other hand, of course, compared with those years, 72, etc., many other cities are like, well, not maybe exactly like Istanbul, but much closer to Istanbul of that time than they used to be at the time. And here you can include a city like Diyarbakır, for instance. There you can find a lot of modernity. But in general, we are talking about a conservative country. Here we have the three big cities. Istanbul is alone. We can also include it in the trio, Ankara and Izmir. And then come, Bursa, Edirne, etc. And going towards more and more conservative. So we have everything. I mean, this has always been a complex society, never a uniform society, and it still somehow keeps that character. We have other questions?
There are other questions. Oh, let me bring this one up, because it is really fun, and I think we're all thinking of this. Berkan Eminsoy says, I have to say this is the most fun webinar I've been a part of. I'm curious about Ayla Hanım's secret to a life full of her positive, vivacious energy.
At Sinop, he says, Sinop, I have a Black Sea song. Woman's lip. Woman's lip. Başımdaki yasmanun, ben verdim parasuni, denizdeki takanun, ben aldım yarısuni, ben aldım yarısuni. Tapancasız, tüfeksiz de hakimi alacağım, hamsi palu gibi de hop hop oynatacağım. This is my Black Sea song, my love.
And your vivacious energy.
It's very artistic.
Yeah.
She says, don't look, I have long hair. Saçım uzun, aklı kısa zannetme. Don't think that I have long hair, that my spirit is not working. Did I make a good language? I should make those songs in English. Talat Alman made my English in Yunus Emre. He was very good. He was a little bit not, the body of Yunus Emre is a Sufi. He's Anatolian Sufi.
Yeah.
So some words he wouldn't say that way. And he's Shakespearean in language. I drift, I'm sad. Yunus Emre never says that. I'm drift, I'm sad. I'm walking, ben giderim yana yana, he says. You understand? So Anatolia's bodies, we call, you can see at the Black Sea, a big man like that, all black, all thin, a man, most women like this kind of man, his body. Yeah. But these people in Sinop, Trabzon, all over this place, Ordu, they make like that, their dance is like that. Can you imagine? And their little steps they take is like a ballet. It's so like womanly, romantic, sweet, a delighted body, you see.
There's also the sort of summing up of so many different cultural traditions and currents. And when you talk about dance on the Black Sea, there must be a lot of Greek origin for that kind of folklore.
They are
As
beautiful.
you go towards the east, then of course the Georgians
And
come, etc. Everywhere you can find Armenians, everywhere you can find Greeks.
when I start singing after the 72 thing, 1972, we went to Erkan had us in Eiffel Tower. We
Mhm.
went there. We went with a group of Black Sea dancers, folklore.
Mhm.
And you know the applauses. You know I was calling them at the I was taking them on the scene. Nobody wanted to go out of the Eiffel Tower, and the Eiffel Tower was closing at 12 or 1 o'clock. Nobody wanted to go out. There was a man, that old man, who was working years in Eiffel Tower, says, Madame, it come the best African dancers, and they didn't have such an applause
Ah.
with yours. They were so beautiful.
Yeah.
And in Saint-Irène, which you talked before, La Mama Theater, La Mama, etc., Helen in America, she came and we built up all big corridors on the church there. And she did the same thing in America. We went to make his life, 13th century.
Mm.
She was very good. She said to me, you go to Tapduk Emre, when you're going, you're gonna make a Turkish dance. I said, Ele, a Turkish dance. In our place in Istanbul, Turkish dance means sexual dance. They put money and so.
Mm.
I can't do. I am Yunus Emre. I can't do. Yes, this is not sex. It's giving a child.
Mm.
And we were surprised for us. We say, if Turkish people comes, they say, what she's doing, this woman, she's mad. These things.
To go back to the movie, I mean, it's so wonderful to, hear such, experiences and comments. But I have a counterfactual question about the very end of the movie, where there is some sense of hope towards the future compared to all the melancholy and sorrow and the nostalgia embedded in this dark comedy. What I would like to ask you is, I mean, what kind of a life do you think Hashmet and Ayşe would live after the very...
At the same place he was there when their friends were drinking and she was serving. That place is beautiful. Well, the sea there. It's the beautiful place of the Bosphorus. Beyler Bey.
Well, it could be a real happy end in the sense that Ayşe has a lot to learn. And Hashmet is in the position of teaching her. As long as this kind of actually bossy relationship goes on, they will both be happy. One learning, the other teaching. And by the time he has taught everything, they will be too old to separate anyway.
Do you think Hashmet would show any signs of change towards his insistence on preserving a particular cultural traditions? Would he be open to that sort of change, thanks to Ayşe?
I don't think he will change his lifestyle. That will be too much. But I think Ayşe could do with him. Unless she learned too much.
It will be the arabesque songs she's going to sing. Not Shehnaz Longa, arabesque songs. That was after this thing. Our music became arabesque. Arabesque is a style that Rococo came in painting in the columns. They put grapes in the columns. And so this is called an arabesque.
It's not pejorative in the West, like it is here.
To add another culture to the culture who is at that time. To add, to bring a new thing, which an ancient thing. So that she will try to bring sing, but if she's going to continue to sing, it will be the arabesque, because after 60s.
No, I think she is open to new influences. I think she would learn how to sing Servi Hürrem Hanım yok, Nideyim Sahne Çemende. That would be easier than Hashmet singing.
You say good. Hashmet would teach to play piano.
Yeah.
Mesela. I believe if she wants, she will learn. She won't need this girl. No. Yani örgü örmeyecek.
No. She's not that keen.
She will do music. She will learn.
Come to an agreement around Refik Fersan, maybe Şevki Bey, if not Utri or Zekai Dede Efendi.
Yeah.
But I think Ayşe would also enjoy that sort of music.
Yes. Our folk music is very beautiful.
Oh, yes, sure.
Very beautiful. There is a Aegean Seas songs. Denizin dibinde Ayşem, denizden evler. Who maybe it's very close to Izmir, this song. And it's about telling under the sea what's going on with her. Yes.
Okay. You don't have other questions from the audience?
We have a few different. We are running out of time actually, but maybe before wrapping up, we can take two more questions. What do you think?
Yes.
There is one to Professor Belge, and I'd like to read it.
Okay.
You define the main character Hashmet as someone from riches to rags. If this film,
Someone from
riches to rags. If this film were to be made today, probably the character would have been exactly the opposite, from rags to riches. Why do you think, well, this is a big question, but it's sort of fun. Why do you think this social change has happened?
From what to what you said, Zeynep?
Rags to riches. What if it were shot now, it
Ah.
would be from rags to riches, whereas in this case, it's from riches to rags.
Hadi bakalım.
Sıkımı da çok zor, evet.
Well, yes, in the traditional society, it was education that got you the rank. And once you got the rank, then you could reach out to the riches, which then your family threw away. Now, we still have a bit of this, but this involves a lot of fraudulent behavior. And now that this has become a capitalist society of a kind, then we can find people sort of rising and rank is always lurking somewhere there, because each political party, each political movement comes with its own prospective bourgeoisie. Like today we have the famous 5 companies who are the favorites of the present government. So in that way they are creating their own bourgeoisie. So again, rank and riches are in some way interlinked. You don't really have the Rothschild family, etc. anymore.
Professor Belge, you use the word bohemian to characterize Hashmet, and I think the word also, was used in the movie itself. I'm really curious about bohemian aspect of Hashmet as a character and what really makes him bohemian. And can we have a bohemian alla turca in the way Hashmet, lives the life?
Well, you had a kind of Alaturka bohemian, and Fikret Adil wrote about it, Osmanlı Mescid book, etc. I call him bohemian because he comes from a genteel family tradition. The gentility is there, but the money has disappeared. So he is sort of underclass. But take this relationship with Ayşe, even though he is a poor man, by marrying him, Ayşe is sort of going on the social ladder because he is the gentleman and not Ayşe. And so he is a sort of comes from an aristocratic family that has lost its fortune, but he is very happy living with poor people, poor, modest people. If he were to make a choice, even when the family had money, this sort of man would go to the friends that we see because he enjoys that kind of society. Well, he's a drinker. That's about his only sin in life. So he does not do some of the things that we see Bohemian people doing in Mystère de Paris, etc., in that sort of literature. Is a more static character. He likes to sit down and have his drink rather than go and run. do things here and there. He's not that type, but finally, he is a bohemian. He keeps on a bohemian existence.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
would like to.
Yeah.
I think we're out of time, but we have a last question. It's not a question. I think it may be appropriate to read this. It's a bit long. Hear this. I don't have anonymous attendee. Thank you, anonymous attendee. I don't have a question, but I wanted to say something. I didn't realize yesterday when I saw this event that dear Ayla Algan will also be here. It is a great honor to listen to her and Murat Belge. As a young person who has studied history and works on Istanbul, I tend to romanticize Istanbul's past as a history student and should not, and usually get caught up in nostalgia about Istanbul that I did not experience. However, I have said this catchphrase, "Ah Güzel İstanbul," many times. In the opposite side where Sadri Alışık says, "Ah Güzel İstanbul," in Rumeli Hisarı. Often wondered how Tevfik Fikret wrote his poem Sis, Mist, but I understood it later on. Istanbul has changed so much that I cannot even imagine it. But I think Istanbul has a spirit, as Hegel defines it, and it will always make us say, "Ah Güzel İstanbul," and we always feel the same feeling that dear Ayla Algan and Sadri Alışık give us at the end of the film on the ferry. Thank you so much for the works you have done.
Thank you very much, Papa. Thank you, Sabancı. Thank you all the literary things you made for us. We thank you very much, very much. I hope we do panels like that about theater.
Maybe next time in person. This time
Yes.
it was
In
virtual.
Istanbul, hopefully.
Or here in New York.
In
In
Istanbul.
New York. Yeah.
For New York, yes, yes. As much as I know, because I lived there for 5 years. At that time, we used to make, after Actor Studio, we used to make with Wendell K. Phillip off Broadway. There was off Broadway that time in 56, 60s. You know, there wasn't off Broadway. There was off, only one. We played Dodo in Boston and so tourneys. I like New York.
Yeah,
I like.
you can't help liking New York.
I won't stay, but I like to go because there is a today's, you can find yourself in today's. Let's say the big museums, the environmental arts. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's much better than Paris. New York for me, it's much new. I can learn new things than Paris. Paris is dead now, and now it's better. Yeah, it's not. But lately in New York, I didn't go. But I think that the book I gained from there, the intellectual thing, objects, painting, now is New York, not Paris, not Rive Gauche, not Rive Gauche.
We are hoping to bring you to New York in person.
Yes, and we
Hopefully soon.
we bring New York. You know what? The existentialism. You know, Sartre, Camus, Mireille Mathieu, singers, black dresses, animals here, the singers, street singers, that we can put it in New York. But there is beautiful people there. There is the In Germany, there was too. I stayed 5 years. I did workers, Turkish workers, teaching and doing, playing with them, making a theater with Peter.
Okay. I'm very sorry. I have to interrupt because we have to finish here. We are out of time. We are finishing with this beautiful picture, beautiful scene from the movie that Professor Shen is now sharing with us from his camera. Yes, we have to finish. The next meeting of our Turkey through its cinema will be on April 8th. Friday, this time, New York time it's 12, Turkey time it's 8 p.m. And we will be talking about another documentary. This time it's called Güzel, Istanbul, Invisible to the Eye, with participation of the director Zeynep Dadak, Richard Peña, and Jamal Kafadar from Harvard University. So we thank you, everyone, Professor Belge, Ayla Hanım, Professor.
I want to send my love to Şekner.
Okay, okay, perfect. Yes.
And good that to build up arts, that all arts are. Thank you, Şekner. I heard that you're not died. You and me, we didn't die.
Yes, yes.
I have the same age.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very
so
much.